And joining me now is Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma. Senator Mullin, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thanks for having me on, Kristen.
Thank you so much for being here. Let's start with the effort to end the war in Ukraine. That war now about to stretch into its fourth year. Incredibly hard to believe. Senator Mullin, do you acknowledge that Vladimir Putin is responsible for starting the war in Ukraine?
You know, I think what President Trump was meaning, not think, I know what he was meaning, is we gave Zelensky multiple warnings that there needed to be negotiations before the war even started. And President Trump is absolutely correct. If he was in office, this war would have never, ever taken place. What we're trying to do and what President Trump is trying to do is end the killing. It's been going on for 3 years. The Biden administration turned a blind eye to it, and President Trump is the president that can end the war. There, fact and simple.
Well, I guess, but I didn't hear an answer to the question of, did Vladimir Putin start the war? You yourself said when Russia invaded Ukraine 3 years ago, quote, "I strongly condemn the unjustified and unprovoked attack on Ukraine." So just to be clear, Senator, do you still believe this was an unjustified and unprovoked attack on Ukraine by Russia?
You know, what we believe is this war should have never taken place. And what we're trying to do here is put President Trump in a good position to negotiate the end of the war. It's the same way that that Reagan worked with Gorbachev by trying to end the Cold War. Trump is a president that's going to be able to end the killings that should have never taken place and would have never taken place if he would have been in office instead of Joe Biden. The reason why is because President Trump leads peace through strength. What Biden led through is appeasement. And that doesn't work on the world stage. And I do believe 100% that we don't want to attack back the president or this administration to a corner on saying things that might damage the ability for President Trump to negotiate an end to this war. And President Trump is a deal maker. He will end this war.
Well, and of course, there's no way to go back in history and know what may or may not have happened under a different president. But let me ask you this. I want to play some of what your Senate Republican...
I don't know if you can say that, because if you look at the... if you look at the history of this, just look at the history.
Yeah.
Crimea was invaded underneath Obama. No, he did not invade any of Ukraine when Trump was in office. He invaded Ukraine when Biden went into office. So I think there is a history to say that there's a pretty good 99.9% chance it wouldn't have happened if Trump would have been in office, or if Biden would have simply used the same peace through strength foreign policy that Trump had.
But, Senator, I think the question is, can President Trump be critical and tough on Putin right now? Let me play you some of what your Senate Republican colleagues had to say this week. Take a listen.
Putin is a war criminal and should be in jail for the rest of his life, if not executed.
He's a gangster with a black heart. I don't. He makes Jeffrey Dahmer look like Mother Teresa.
This man is a cancer and the greatest threat to democracy in my lifetime.
Senator, is it important for the President of the United States, who speaks for all of the country, to be honest and critical of Vladimir Putin?
I think the president has been very critical of Putin, and I'm not sitting here defending Putin. Putin's not a good guy. At the same time, that's up to the Russian people. That's not up to us to make that decision. What President Trump is trying to do is end the war, and he's trying to end the war from a place of strength. You don't end a war from a place of weakness, which is why Biden could never end the war. Trump is going to be able to end the war. He said he was going to do it when he was on the campaign trail, and he's kept his promises, and he's going to continue to deliver on those promises.
Let me zoom out and ask you big picture. Do you think the United States should stay in NATO, Senator?
You know, if it's in our interest, I absolutely do. But right now, NATO has not always been playing in our best interest. And when it's not in Americans' best interest anymore, then we should relook at things. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. We see NATO and we see UN sometimes weaponizing against the United States, and we're the biggest funder of it. And if it's not in the taxpayers' best interest, if it's not in Americans' foreign policy best interest, then we need them to look at a different approach.
The United States has historically determined that it is in the United States' best security interest.
Historically.
President Zelensky himself has said he believes that Russian troops are amassing potentially in Belarus could be potentially eyeing the possibility of going into other NATO nations. Can European members and NATO count on the United States and President Trump to help defend them if they are attacked by Russia, Senator?
Well, I don't, first of all, I don't believe for a second Russia is going to advance a war in any other country right now. It'd be extremely dangerous, and he will call President Trump's hand. President Trump does not just simply say idle words. He delivers it. We saw what happened in Syria. Keep in mind, in Syria, he told Russia to stay out of it in 2017. They went ahead and helped Assad, and they delivered chemical weapons on their own people. What did President Trump do within 30 minutes? He kicked Russia out of the airspace and completely destroyed their airfield that they were operating underneath. Russia and Putin fears President Trump.
Senator, let me ask you about the breaking news that happened late Friday night when President Trump fired Joint Chiefs of Staff CQ Brown, who President Trump himself picked 5 years ago to lead the Air Force. I want to play you some of what Democratic Congressman James Clyburn had to say in reaction. Take a look.
Is that why you think the president has let him go, because he's black?
That's what I think. When they say DEI, we know what it means. As I heard somebody say earlier today, they are substituting these acronyms for the N-word. So why would you apply the term woke to General Brown? What does that mean?
Senator Mullin, what is your reaction to Congressman Clyburn? Do you think that CQ Brown was fired because he's black?
Unfortunately, Congressman Clyburn, he constantly pulls the race card out. This has nothing to do with this. We're a civilian force, and the president gets to choose his closest advisors, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is his closest advisors. Obviously, he said very positive things about General Brown, even when he was dismissing him. But the president has a right to pick people around him that he wants to, that he trusts. And at some point, he chose to go a different direction. This had absolutely zero to do with race. Keep in mind, the reason why he was on the promoted the first time was because President Trump did that in his last administration. So that it's dangerous every time the left wants to pull out the race card. It's dangerous and reckless and ridiculous.
All right, let's turn now to these steep government cuts that we're seeing. They're starting to be felt across the country. Here are some recent headlines in your home state of Oklahoma. Quote, federal layoffs felt across indigenous communities in Oklahoma. Oklahoma University president says the National Institutes of Health funding cut would severely impact university research. Thousands of Oklahoma veterans and caregivers struggle amid cuts to VA. This comes as there have been town halls all across the country, including in Oklahoma, protesting these cuts. What is your message to the people of Oklahoma who say they are being hurt by these cuts by President Trump and Elon Musk?
Well, let's go back and talk about their protest. The chair of the DNC, Ken Martin, openly admitted on MSNBC just yesterday that they were manufacturing these protests. They were busing in armies to manufacture these protests.
But what about
now,
the headlines in your state? Hold on, Senator. What about the headlines in your state?
I'll get to that. I will get to that. Let's talk about the NIH. The funding has been abused all across the universities. We have Ivy League from Harvard to Yale that's using 69% of the NIH funding for monies other than research, meaning overhead. You have the University of Oklahoma that 55% of the dollars that are going in for research are being used for overhead funding. Those dollars should be around 15 to 25% tops to be used for overhead instead of NIH actual research and development. There has to be a reset. It has been abused, and what the president is saying is that number can be anywhere from 15 to 25%, but it should be a max. If you start looking at donors that donate to the universities, they immediately put in 15 to 25% tops on their donation can be used for that. So if you want to start talking about actual cuts, what Oklahomans want is to make sure that we get rid of the waste and fraud inside the federal government, and that's exactly what the president has done. They've already identified billions of dollars of waste and fraud for the taxpayers
But Senator, first of all, they haven't provided proof of fraud, but talk to the people in Oklahoma who've lost their jobs, who say they are hurting. They don't know how they're going to pay their mortgage. They don't know how they're going to make ends meet. Talk to those people. What's your message to them? They say enough of these cuts.
Well, I would tell you that the majority of the American people want to make sure that their taxpayers are being used correctly. I don't want anybody to lose their job. That's the last thing we want. But at the same time, anytime you're trying to secure this country, which a national security risk we have right now is our national debt, we have to make changes, and we have to make it quickly. Unfortunately, when we have bureaucrats and politicians that have wastefully spent the American taxpayer dollars, and we don't have to look any further than USAID to see the wasteful billions of dollars that were spent, cuts had to take place. And every business owner understands this. Every business owner understands that you have to get your house in order before you can advance. That's exactly what DOGE is doing. Think about this. Every successful business owner out there and every successful business has hired consultants to come in and take an unbiased look and make changes, because sometimes when you're so close to it, you can't see what the real changes need to take place. Elon Musk is the United States consultant right now. He is literally the best entrepreneur we've had in our lifetime, and he's doing it for free, and he's taking an unbiased look, saying these programs make no sense. Let's save the taxpayer dollars and get our house in order.
Senator, very quickly, before I let you go, the national debt is $36 trillion. DOGE is only dealing right now with the federal workers, which is only 8% of federal spending, a small fraction of the federal budget. So how do DOGE's layoffs actually deal with the debt problem?
Take care of your pennies, and the dollars will take care of themselves. Every business owner knows that. Within only 4 short weeks, we've already identified over $55 billion of waste and fraud. We're only 4 weeks into a 4-year administration. That is taking care of the pennies and going to get to the dollars. We will get our house back in order.
All right, Senator, very quickly, because I am almost out of time. President Trump again this week joked about running for a 3rd term. Would you support changing the Constitution to allow Donald Trump to seek a 3rd term in office?
First of all, he joked, and so I think we need to take that as a joke, not being literal.
Some of his allies say they are deadly serious, Senator. Would you support that?
Well, I'm not changing the Constitution, first of all, unless the American people chose to do that. I will say, just as what you said at the beginning, it was a joke, and people need to take it as a joke. The president is a very interesting guy that you can find extreme humor in when you sit down to visit with him. At the same time, he can be deadly serious. That's why I call him my friend.
Senator Mullin, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Hope you'll come back again soon. Thank you.